All right, thank you for gathering here today because I have a lot to say, and I'm going to say it in a little different way. So, you know that in my lifetime as Thomas Jefferson, I had a lot to do with the way that the new nation would come together in a hope of everyone pulling together and being a good vibration on freedom and liberty for everybody to grow and do what they needed to do in order to know their own path, you see. The idea was minimal government at that time. And of course, as you know, the reach of government has increased over time because everybody wants to make things right. Everybody has a particular point of view and they say, well, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do this. And little by little, they get their way and people do this and do that and do the other. And it gets very, very complicated. In my day, you weren't supposed to campaign for the office of presidency. And it's kind of the idea that people would say, hey, he's the guy. This is the one we want in the president's office because he knows the way. He's the smartest one. He's the one that can help us all. And it was pretty easy with George Washington, right? Because everybody loved George because he had the reputation of somebody who was fatherly and kind and still a very, very good at the game of war because he wore his hair in a very dignified way. And he would say, well, I'm just here to do what I can, God. I'm just here to do what I can. And if I can save the day, thank you for showing me the way. And so then after George, it was a little bit difficult because there were different people who thought they should be president, you see, and I was one of them. And I thought that I knew more than everybody else, and I was afraid that if I didn't have a lot to say, that they would lose their way because I understood something that they didn't. I understood that we all have to play in the same way. We all have to trust on God, you see, and we all have to trust on each other to work together and not trust on the golden idol, you see. And so gradually the old ideal faded away and it became a habitual process of campaigning. And then it became a process of trying to get powerful people behind you. And then it came a process of trying to buy your way into the presidency. And so the old ways have fallen away and the new ways are kind of corrupt, you see. But they are corrupt for everybody. They're corrupt for everybody, you see, because everybody has to play the game or they have no hope of getting in the presidency. And so they have to say, well, am I the right person to be in the president's seat or not? If I think I am, if I think I know the way, then I'm going to have to play in a corrupt way. Because I'm going to have to sell my soul in order to satisfy all the different groups that think they know how to run the USA. And so it's become a mess, you see, it's become a mess. And so I'm here today because I'm looking at the upcoming presidential elections and I'm saying, boy, that's going to be bad. That is going to be traumatic for this country because no matter what happens, the people will be up in arms, you see. They will be up in arms. And so what I'm here to tell you today is that I need you to play in a different way, if you're willing to. There is nobody here that's forced to do anything. However, what all of you are asked to do is to share your thoughts on what I say to you. And what I'm saying to you today, as you look at the election coming up in November, not who you think is going to win, but what you think is going to happen regardless of who wins. So just give me your thoughts on that.
I don't follow politics.
Hmm?
I don't follow politics. I couldn't even tell you who's running or who's doing what where. I don't follow any of that. I don't watch anything
Okay.
mainstream with the news.
Any of the rest of you?
I would, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would think that if Biden wins, um, there would be some conflict. And I think if Trump wins, there'll be some conflict, uh, either way. But I'm not convinced that the Democrats would respond in the same way that the Republicans would.
When you mean? You mean if Trump won?
Yeah. I don't see that happening in that same way.
All
Just
right. So
personal
what you're
opinion.
saying is you see more chaos if Biden wins than if Trump wins.
In a way. I don't know. Yeah, it's because I feel like it's more reactive on the other side, more uh, just based on like the insurrection, you know.
Any other thoughts on it?
I agree with Amy. I do feel the same way. If Biden wins, there would be probably dancing in the streets, and if Trump, conflict in the
If
streets,
Biden wins, there would be dancing in the street
dance of joy,
from the Republicans.
conflict, fighting
Oh, conflict. I thought you said dancing in the streets.
for Biden.
Okay, but what do you see overall for the country if Biden wins?
I see stability.
Stability? What do the rest of you see?
I think if Biden wins, Trump is just going to double down and go crazy. And just unfortunately, he's going to stir up all the religious people to finally make a stand for him and come out spouting their God stuff and things like that. Because I think if Biden wins, we're going to really have some rough days because Trump is already the most arrogant, loudmouth person. And I think he's just going to double down unless some way he gets put in prison and can't talk.
Well, that might stir up his followers, though. I mean, look at the last election. What happened? You
Well,
think it's going to be? You think it's going to be better than that?
oh, I think it's going to be worse because I think a lot of people that have been supporting Trump have been a passive. I have a lot of Christian friends. I have cousins and everyone that are always telling me how much they're praying for Trump and stuff. And I think if he doesn't win, then they're going to just really come out with the devil is in control. And I think they might even become more militant than they are now, thinking they're doing it in the name of God. So
That's what I see too, personally. What about if Trump wins? What about the other side? I mean, let's say that Trump wins. This about his followers. So what's that going to do for his followers if Trump wins?
Well, there's going to be a lot of arrogant, I told you so, God's on his side, and they're going to feel justified. They're going to feel like they're winning, you know. I think the people that are supporting Biden will be very disappointed, but I don't think they're going to take to the streets like Trump people did when he didn't. And, you know, Trump just said the election was stolen and everything was that way. And if you certain news outlets, if you listen to it, it sounded like he really had a case, but it was very polarizing. We totally lost the whole concept of that we're one nation and we, you know, support the person that the people elected.
What do you think is going to happen if Trump wins? I'm just asking this myself, but Thomas isn't. What do you think if Trump wins is going to happen on things like people who stand up for abortions and, you know, the gay communities, etc.?
Do you
The
mean
US,
how do we think they'll react, or what do you
Yeah,
think
do
will
you think
happen
that
to them?
there will be a bigger push down on those people?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can see abortion bans, stripping rights completely. He's already said that he's going to go after anybody who went after him. There's a lot of like revenge minded, you know, he's going to fix it, put the people in there that he wants in there to carry these things out. And
I mean,
it comes down to,
as bad as it was 4 years ago, you know, or 8 years ago, don't you think it will be worse now? I mean, as much liberty as he took with that presidential office,
oh
and
yeah,
his followers are even more virulent today than they were then.
yes,
This is me
yeah.
talking. This is what I see.
Hmm. So then you start talking about what point did the Democrats start to fight, or how do we deal with that? You know, is this when they, for Thomas back then, is this when they picked up the guns and said, we're divided, we fall, you know, united we stand?
Well, here's the problem, because all of this talk has been about Republicans and Democrats.
Hmm.
None of it has been about Americans. And this is what I'm talking about, is the system has become corrupted by the tendency to follow the party lines, regardless of the quality of the candidate. And each party has to find a way to outpay the other party, right? And so they have to sell their soul over and over and over again. And this is politics today. It hardly resembles at all the ideal that I had back in the day, that the president should be the one most fitted for the job, period. The one the people could respect, the one who cared about the people, the one who did not have an ego that he had to satisfy, the one that was humble and kind. And this is not the way it is today because of the polarity that has arisen. Now, I'm going to say that there is a method to this madness because God has it in hand. Because we've talked about all the different pieces, the rapture, etc., climate change, and all of these things that have to work together in order to restore the earth to a good balance and to allow a community of people to arise who will realize that they have to live in peace and harmony with each other and with God. We have talked about the new nation under God for a while now, right? You've heard us talk about that? The new nation under God that needs to arise. And so we have to think about the example we gave you. Are we going to throw the baby out with the bathwater? Or are we going to bathe it in sewage? Or are we going to find the source of clear water and treat the baby kindly and not like it needs to be beheaded, you see, or drenched in shit? And there isn't much choice today because of the way the people play. Because the people themselves are the ones who are dictating what's happening, you see, by the way they play. And so I'm here to say, what is the third option? What do you think the third option is? How can we, as a community, as a group, think about these things and say, well, there's got to be a different way to play. There's got to be a different way to play. How can we find a different way to play if we don't like the way that it's shaping up? And the choices we have. If these are the choices we have, is there another choice? Is there another way to go? What do you think?
Would be to go play a different way and just go away from the current government structure, not participate in that.
Other thoughts?
I've thought about what we're learning about working through, getting ideas shared and all of that. But it's been a real question to me. We can do that in a new community, but other than being an example to the earth, the world, and maybe that's enough, how will that impact the devastation and all of that that everyone else is, going to be going through? It's like an arc, but will there be an answer? I don't know.
Jim, do we need to be responsible for what happens to everybody
No.
else?
No,
So who do we need to be responsible for?
ourselves and God.
Right. And you're a good person to think about this because we brought up the issue of choices you had when it came to vaccines, right?
Right.
And how can we expand our point of view through the windshield if we clear it off to see what our options are? What are our options then? Anyone see, besides, I think that Amy presented a point of view that was an option that she saw. Anybody else see any other options as to how we can play this game in a different way that will not feed into the hatred and the despair that this election is going to cause in America?
Well, another point could be participating in the campaigns, but going out and talking about America instead of the individual candidates.
Any other thoughts?
Don't buy into the hatred that everybody's putting out on the other side and try to see everybody's point of view
Right.
because they all want the best for America. Everybody's got a different version of that. If you don't buy into the hatred, then
That
you're
would
not
be
adding
that
to it.
would be an assumption that everybody wants what's best for America.
Wow.
I personally would not buy into that. I would say there are people who want to see the destruction of the United States. And they may not articulate it that way. They may be like the ones that when God says, well, how are you today? I'm fine. But they don't say I'm fine, but I'm really blue because you know what? I feel like all the rich people are got all the money and I don't have any of it. And this whole thing, I just want to get back at them. I don't care what happens to USA. I'd rather tear it down than see them continue to have all that money, etc. Whatever the bitch is.
Right. But to them, that is caring about the United States because they want to change it so that it's more fair for everybody, even though they're going to burn areas or they're going to wreck stuff for people, right? That they say they're patriots. They say they're, you know, they want to do that, but they do it through hatred and violence. And so the outcome is never going to be a good thing.
Do you think it's that they want what's best for the USA or they want what's best for them?
For
For
them.
them.
But I mean, like the way they're doing it is not best for the United States, but they don't see that because the hatred is blocking the windshield, right?
Right. So the thoughts I have today are that we do need to play in a different way, and we need to begin to outstrip the dark energy all around us by taking a different stand, you see? And the stand we need to take is to say, kind of like Amy did, that we need to play in our own way. If we know that the system is corrupt and we say there's nothing we can do about it, then what does that say about us? How many of you think that it is corrupt the way the presidential elections have developed today? Only one or two? What is the definition of corruption? When does something become corrupt? When it no longer meets the needs of humanity. When we lose our trust on God, you see. When we lose our trust on our connection to God and our connection to reality, we become corrupt. Because we think it's all about us and the ego takes over. So another way to say it is the ego is the corruption of humanity. Because it says me, 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 me. I don't care what price I have to pay. I will suck up to the Bible thumpers and hold my Bible upside down and say, I'm with you guys. I'm the new version of Jesus Christ. Or you can say, hey, I will suck up to this corporation today and take the pay because we need the money in order to get the clout. And which group are you going to suck up to? And so if you are corrupt in your own energy, then you will be trusting on corruption and not God energy. And so we've been preparing for this actually. Steph is not going to like it when I tell you this. But we told her years ago that she had to run for the presidency. And she doesn't want to be president of the USA because to her that would be a nightmare. It would be the worst thing ever to have to preside over a bunch of whiny babies who are either drowning in sewage or crawling around on the sidewalk because they got thrown out with the bathwater. What a fiasco that would be, right? It would drive you insane if you had to do that today. And I'll tell you what, it nearly drove me insane to do it back in my day. To have to listen to all the whiners who would say, you can't buy all that property from France today. Even if it's a good deal, you're not allowed to do that. And I said, fuck you. I'm going to buy it because we're going to need it. And we did. Right? And the same thing with Alaska. When Alaska was purchased, that was Seward's folly. And Alaska became a very, very valuable piece of property. And so you have to make decisions, people, when you're in that seat, right? You have to make decisions for the best that you think you can do. And if the people mock you and throw tomatoes at you, there's not much you can do. But try to think ahead and say, I trust on God today to guide my hand. and to do what I need to do. And if I didn't do that in my day, even though it was an excessive use of the presidential authority, you'd probably be scrunched on the East Coast today without much hope of escaping from the French monarchy or the British monarchy, because who knows if they would have changed their way they play if it hadn't been for the USA that showed them the way. And so today I want to say that we need to stand up and say, hey, we support a new nation under God. We support the USA, period. We support the USA Constitution. We support the ideal of freedom for Americans to do it their way, to seek happiness, and we support the right of humanity to love each other and to communicate with each other and figure out how to do it together, you see, so that everybody can be at trust on being free and yet being united, you see. Does this make sense to you?
Yes.
So what I'm suggesting is that we begin to pull together it now in a way that will say, we are a group that is trusting on the USA. We're trusting on the ideals that were put in play 250 years ago. We're here to say that we're not going to fight you with guns and mortars today because we're past that point. We're past that point because humanity is ready to grow, you see. Humanity is ready to grow and start behaving like adults and not like spoiled children fighting over the toys, trying to get the biggest bullies behind them to support them. We're not going to play that way. And so we just say, hey, this is the way that we trust on a new way to play. And we're going to run for a new nation under God. And the only reason I bring up the presidency of Stephanie, because we asked her to do that back in the day, was that it would already be in play today, because she already has a website where she talks about it. How many of you have seen that website? One or two? And as she explained it, she wasn't running for president of the current Yes USA. She was running for president of a nation that would play in a kinder way. And if you voted for that nation, it was like voting for her, but she didn't want to have to tell you what to do. She trusted on you, that you would work with each other and figure it out. It's just a way to say that we don't want to play that way anymore. We're going to offer people a third option. And the third option is that they wake up, because what's going to happen, you see, is that the people are going to get fired up as they realize what's coming. Both those who identify as Republicans and Democrats are going to get fired up. And they're going to say, oh my God, it's going to be the end of the USA, no matter which way it happens, because there's such a large group of people who are determined to destroy this country. And I'm not going to mince words here. Trump is here to destroy the USA. And the way it has begun to play in such a corrupt way, it only needed a final blow, you see. It only needed that final blow because it was already so corrupt. By the lack of trust on God, you see, and the lack of trust on the unity of humanity. that brother would fight brother, and brother would condemn brother. And people would walk in their churches and say, well, you can't have an abortion today. You can't wear a dress today. You can't do this or that. Pretty soon it'll be, you must wear a burqa today. You must bow to the dictator on the wall, you see, and say, I give you homage for having taken away the USA. Because no matter which way you play, you have to take responsibility for the consequences, you see. So we've already spoken about the ones who are counting on the rapture and the destruction of the USA because they hate the USA. And we could think of as many reasons why they hate the USA as there are people who trust that way because they feel like the USA has failed them. They feel like the US Constitution has failed them because it did not protect their version of God, you see. It did not say, when you walk into that school today, you'll see the 10 Commandments on the wall. And this was so basic to the USA, the separation of church and state, because the intent was that we would not be run by a theocracy and we would not be run by a dictatorship. The people would be able to say what they had to say. But we trusted on people who were educated and smart enough to know that united we stand and divided we fall. And you know that good men have come and gone in the USA to try to keep it together and to say, today we stand before this flag to say, I love you, every one of you, all of my fellow Americans. And I want you to love me too. Because when we love each other, we figure out a way. We figure out a way. And if you insist on having slaves today, and we cannot tolerate forcing people to live in servitude that way, then we'll have to figure it out. So let's figure it out today, and let's not shed blood today. And God came to say, I hear you, son. I hear you when you say, why did we have to do it that way? Why did so many American boys have to die on the battlefields in their own country? Why, God? Why? And God says today, so you've had plenty of time to play and understand these issues, right? Haven't you? So now the time has come when I have to cull the chaff from the grain. And I have to say that the ones who play with me today are the ones who will stay in a good way because they'll trust on reality. But the ones who pretend they trust on God when really they're trusting on the demon today will have to go away because they couldn't figure out that all they had to do was turn around and look at me and see that I'm not an old man with a white beard. And I'm not a judge that says that you will go to heaven or hell. And I'm not a man with red hair that holds the Bible up in the air and says, I don't really know what it says in here, but it looks good. Could you get a shot from the other side? This is not the way that the children of God were meant to play. And it is time that people understand that the third option does not mean you reject God. It does not mean that you put God in a bottle and put him on a shelf and make everybody bow to him. It does not mean that any one of the children of God has the right to command others to play in a certain way in order for him to be the king of the castle, even though the ground under the castle is crumbling away and the castle will fall to the ground, you see, and everyone in it will drown in the rising sea. The coming destructive energy that will cover the USA and every country in this world today will have the people weeping and crying and saying, God, we were just joking when we said you would come back and pull the wicked from the good. And so I hope I'm good enough today to get away before you destroy everybody else, because my ego has grown so big that I can barely cover it with this hat today. And so I'm hoping that you will go away and let me be and destroy everybody else, you see, because they are blind. They are blind to reality, because it had to be. It had to be this way, you see. It had to be this way so you, the ones in this group, could stand up and say, we don't play that way. There is another way, people. If you're ready, there is another way. And the way is the way that was intended back in the day when Thomas Jefferson sat down in his parlor one day and said, what am I going to say? What the heck am I going to say to old King George? Am I going to say, hey, you play kind of rough today and we just want you to be nicer, okay? Or am I going to say, F you, we're not going to play with you anymore. So be on guard, buddy. What am I going to say? What am I going to say? What would you have said? What would you have said in that day? Because the day has come for you. The day has come for you today to say, we're not going to play that way, buddy. We're going to stand up together and say, we support the USA. However, the current trajectory of this country is not in conformity with freedom for all and unity in in humanity, as we each relate to each other and to God, you see. We're going to stand up and say together, if you crucify one of us, you're going to have to take all of us, because we stand with Jesus today. And we're not religious, we're not Christians, because we know that Christ consciousness is what it's about. We know that the ability to understand that every one of us, regardless of our color, regardless of our age, regardless of our stage of development, regardless of our religious background, are an equal part of humanity. And we all belong to the earth, you see, and the earth belongs to us. And now we got to figure it out. We got to figure it out together. And the ones of us who are trusting on God are the ones who are trusting on reality. And the ones who are trusting on being able to save the USA from the corruption that is seeping up from so far down in its history are facing a fantasy. You're looking at the fantasy version of reality because you've watched too many movies, honey. You've watched too many movies of good versus evil. You've gone to too many shows that showed you that you were the good guys and the other guys were the bad guys. And now it's time to know that you're the bad guy. If you don't accept reality, you're the bad guy. And so you're the one the good guys were trying to kill, you see? So you might as well face reality that you're as good or bad as the guy next to you. That you might as well give them a hug and say, I'm sorry for what I did to you. I'm sorry for the idea that I called you this or that. I'm sorry for the idea that I didn't understand what was in your heart. I'm sorry for the fact that I didn't stop and say, how are you today? I'll sit here a half hour if I have to and listen to you so I can get to know you. Because if I get to know you, then God will get to know both of us, you see. And God will know how to restore this country to one nation under God. And we'll still do what we're required to by the laws that are passed. That's okay, because as Jesus would say, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and give unto God what is God's. And so we give unto God today, and we give unto Caesar until Caesar goes away, because Caesar will not stay in reality, because the Caesar is a false ruler, you see. Caesar will cease to be the reality of the coming unified trust on humanity, because the USA will rise again. And this time it will rise above the lower vibrations that have afflicted humanity when they created wars. And they battled over stupid things like the length of your hair. The way we will be, you see, is to live in peace and harmony, because that is the way God wants it. And God has his fingers on the pulse of the USA, and he does say, it's time to find another way, people. It's time to make another choice. It's time to be humble. It's time to be the meek who inherit the earth. It's time to be the ones who don't need to be told what God looks like, because they already know what God looks like. God looks like the feeling in their heart when they know that things are right. And the feeling in their heart when things go awry tells them that they might need to try to reconnect with God again, so they can do it in a way that will say, I love you today. I love the USA, and I love my brethren, you see. And whatever we've been through, whatever our past history, whatever our lifetimes together have been that have caused us to hate each other, it's time to amend the Constitution to say, I love you today. I love you today. I love every one of you. And I just want to say, if I could stand in front of you today and say, I am so proud of you. I am so very proud of you that you have come together today to listen to me as you would, because you are the kernels, you see, of reality. And there doesn't need to be any privates in this community, because the privacy that you need when you have to recede from trust on your neighbor does not exist here, because no matter what you've done or who you've been, you are loved, you see, And we will only ask that you love us back. And if you choose to play a different way, that's okay. Because eventually God will restore you to another opportunity to play the way He'd like you to. Thank you. All right, good speech, Thomas.
Got my vote. You got my vote. You know what I was thinking? There's you guys heard about when when the battles were starting and Washington saw God or saw an angel? Have you ever heard that story?
Which battle are you talking about?
I think it was when we were trying to figure out how we were going to win against England.
Well, they didn't have
And
Washington, D.C. at that time.
no, the president.
Washington,
Yeah,
George.
yeah. He saw either an angel or a God, or it's out there that he's. So I'm wondering if all these guys had sort of a direct line like you do, the ones that came.
Well, I don't think so. I was in that
No.
lifetime. Remember, I was Sally Hemings. I was Thomas's
Yeah.
unofficial wife.
So that's
I don't
just
think so, but some of them were Masonic. And they had the old kind of secret hidden knowledge,
okay.
so to speak. That whatever it meant to them, it had to do with trusting on God. And so the some of the stuff on the dollar bill is important. The eye, big eye.
I have province.
I don't use this word anymore because it so confused people. But for a long time, I had a hard time when they started talking to me about money. Money is man eye. Man eye. It is the observer. You are the point of view for God. It is man's eye that allows God to see your reality, right? And to create it.
Yeah.
So that when they talk to me about money, they would be talking about man eye, and I couldn't figure it out for the longest time. When I talk about it, other people would get confused. And so the big eye on the money and the dollar bill is reflective of this understanding.
Okay.
The pyramid on it is reflective of the Trinity. So these concepts were well known then, and form part of the structure of the country, but not in a religious way.
Right. Yeah. Now everyone says it's the Illuminati.
Well, I know. I never could figure that out. It's like fear, fear. Let's create a conspiracy. We can all be afraid that somebody is out there to control us.
Another
And
one.
I was always like, what's the end game? Why do they want to control you? All they need is money. Give them some money.
It's how many conspiracy theories you can pile up. Yeah. So
I was kind of like that with the devil. Why would the devil want to put you in hell? That doesn't look like much fun to sit around and have to poke people all day, and see if they're done or not. Why would you want to bother? Why wouldn't you just go sit on the beach somewhere and be happy?
Yeah. Are they giving you instruction as to how or when, or is it just kind of step by step with this?
I think it's play by play, but let's see. Remember the Alamo, dear. What do you remember about the Alamo? Are you asking me or are you asking Amy? Well, let's ask Amy. What does she remember about the Alamo?
Not much. Just what I've read.
I remember they defended it to the last man. So I remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember the Alamo was a rallying cry for those who wanted to help others see the sacrifice of those who gave their lives for their country. And those who heard the cry would say, I would rather die than surrender my point of view, which is kind of a stupid thing to say, but it was what it meant to them. My country above all, even my life. I would give my life for this country. And many have given their lives for this country. And Steph pointed something out to me once. She said to me, Thomas, all these veterans get a lot of due because people say, remember all the veterans and we got to take care of them. But what about the mothers? Because without the mothers, we wouldn't even have a population to protect. What about what the mothers gave when they stayed home to take care of their babies, when they had to have those big bellies, and when they gave up their opportunities for an education and all of this other stuff in order to be mothers? Why are they overlooked? You know, they get Mother's Day kind of like a backhand slap to say, well, we'll give you one day, people, when you don't have to do the dishes. But what about them? And this is a travesty that humanity has forgotten about the mothers, that humanity has forgotten about those who raise the children, that humanity has forgotten that the mothers once provided a very, very powerful service to the country because they raised their children to trust on taking care of the family. And not only taking care of the family, but taking care of the community and the country. And then the children started getting farmed out to daycares where they raised the children on the latest cartoon characters. And they said, well, play this way, whichever way the cartoon characters were playing. In the old days, they would bop each other over the head and run over each other and flatten each other out. And then that was too violent. And so they were running around saying, I love you, let's dance together. And what difference did it make? What difference did it make? What was missing in the daycares that was not available in the homes?
Mom had to work.
Well, the connection was lost.
Yeah.
The connection in the family and in the community began to disintegrate, you see. And the more it disintegrated, the more people lost their trust on unity. And the more they lost their ability to set aside the ego and say, maybe it's not all about me. Maybe it's not all about me. Because the kids in the daycare were learning that it was all about them. It's all about them. They had to be treated with kid gloves, you see, and they had to be put away from their family in a group of children that didn't understand the interaction of the young and old, you see. And so more and more the communities and the families began to disintegrate, you see, in their ability to comprehend unity. I'm not saying I know it all. I'm not saying this happened in every family. I'm not saying there weren't families already back in the day that were not particularly pleasant in the way they would play. What I'm saying is overall, we have stratified this society so that you don't know who you are, where you belong. And so all you know is yourself, you see. You only know your cohort. You only know the ones your age. You don't know the experience of having been close to grandma who was dying, you see, and mother had to say, shh, don't talk. Grandma's in the bedroom and she's in pain, you see. So just go in and give her a kiss and say you love her. Children today don't know this. They don't know what it's like to care for one another through the ages. And through the pages of history, humanity has slowly begun to lose its trust on reality because they don't have to go out and pick the fruit off the tree. They just go to the supermarket and buy it, you see. And so they have lost their connection to the earth. So all of these pieces are coming together. They're coming together in a very powerful way. So you ask me, how should we play today? And what I say is that we need to talk about it. And some of it is how much energy you wish to give to it. So sort of like the loaves and fishes. How fast can you pass around that money? How fast can you accelerate the energy? Because the energy that is flowing through you, you see, is flowing through everyone in this group. I'm going to stop here and ask if you can feel it. Can you feel the energy of the group today?
I think so, yeah. I feel it.
Do you feel like you're accepted in the group?
I do. I've always felt accepted.
Do you feel like you accept others in the group?
Yes.
Did you have something to say, Marianne?
No, I was just agreeing with, yes, I feel accepted, and yes, I feel that I accept others. I like being in this group.
Do you feel in this group like it matters to the rest of the groups what you might have done in your history or in your past lives that others might blame you for? Do you feel like that matters?
No, I don't. I don't think anybody really cares that much what I've done or been or anything. It's just like what I am now.
Yes, because we're going from here. This is where we are on the map, here, where the X is. This is where we are. We're going from here. We're not going backwards. We're not going into that cage that they prepared for us because we've already left it, you see. Why would we go back into the cage? Why would we go back and stay? I got to stay in my little cage and I can't connect with other people because I have to be afraid of them, you see, that if I tell them the truth, they'll hate me. I just get to express myself. I get to talk about things. And it may seem strange to some people that we would talk about talking to whales, right? But did anybody feel that was really that strange? Did you get something out of it?
Always. Always.
It doesn't matter what we say so much as how we interpret it. And when we're in the group, people had different interpretations of different things. And when we talk about it, then you get a different point of view. So I'm going to leave it to you at this point. I think all of you should go over and look at Steph's page about Stephanie Patel for president of a peaceful nation and consider what she says there, because it's really about you. And then you can begin to talk to others, you see, but we'll figure it out. Because if you're willing to give some energy to this, God promises you that the energy will come back to you. What you give, you shall receive. There's nobody in here that's too old to say, I love you today. There's nobody in here who's too old to say, hey, I have something to tell you, because I've come to see things through a clear windshield, and I can see what's before us, you see, and I can see that there's a lot of nails sticking up in this roadway. And there's a moose there that we're going to run into if we keep going that way. So, those of you who are open to hear what I have to say, I want you to hear about another way. And let's take this country by storm, you see, because the storm always begins with a little breeze in the trees. Does this make sense to you?
Yes. Mhm.
All right. I will stop. If anybody has anything else to say, we can all listen today. And if not, we will call it a day. Thoughts about this session? What did you guys like, not like? You know, don't be sure to say it because God's listening and he'll hear what you like or don't like or would have liked.
I liked hearing that moms were just as important as soldiers because you're right. He was right. Nobody thinks of it that way, you know, and a lot of them bore the burden of the loss of their son, you know.
Mhm. Yep.
So there's a lot of jobs for moms, you know, and that was nice to hear.
I like the insight with the daycare and the loss of the unity in the family. I thought that really hit me. That I can see how it could be a part of all that's what's happening.
I like that we need to talk to God each day and say good morning and get the conversation started. Whether we're talking through you or just talking directly to him, but the answer will come somehow.
I love the fact that there is a third way, not just Republican or Democrats, but there is another way. Because on my own, I couldn't figure that out. I just thought, okay, it's all messed up, but what can we do? So there is a third way. So now I'm eager to know the plan, see how we can take the first step and move on towards a better nation.
I'm thankful for hope that there, yeah, like when he's saying there is a third way. It seems to look at it in the natural, there seems like there's no hope, but God is giving us, and Thomas giving us a way to to move forward. That's pretty exciting. Scary, but exciting.
That's scary.
There's really no other way to see it, as when the first question that we were asked about chaos on both sides, no matter what. And does anyone else ever feel like you've got these two choices and it's just you feel like you're trapped?
Yeah, I felt that
You know?
way.
Yeah. So that third option is very nice to hear. It's like, I didn't know we could do it that way. You know, why didn't I know we could do it that way? Yeah.
Paige, were you wanting to say something?
Sure, I'm glad that the story of the rover was brought back up too, about how we're all connected and how when we're not connected, all our little rover selves are bumping up into each other, causing problems, and that's really what's going on right now. Is nobody is understanding the definition of God, and that is not something that you have to go out and like look for him. He's already there. It's just a part of us trying to talk and listen and knowing that it's not like something you have to go on this long, he's already there. And so a lot of people don't know the true definition of, and we're not taught that. A lot of us is not taught that correctly when we're younger. And so I was thinking about, yeah, that would have been a good way to explain it clearly, on how we can be connected to God, that kind of stuff. So.
Well, as a step, are you guys okay if we go ahead with Thomas's speech here today? I'd have to listen again to God's stuff to see if that should be, but are you guys okay with that being a public video? As a way
That
you
was
can
a
point people
great
to it and
speech.
say, yeah, listen to Thomas has
That
to
was
say.
a great
Yeah.
speech.
I already have planned to how it's gonna share it. I hope
That'd
it's
be great. It
okay.
would be great if he could stand up and say, hey, I'm here today. He talked.
Yeah, because I was there. I was voting. I was like, let's do this. Where's that flag? You know, I
All right,
just,
good.
yeah.
Well then, thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Thomas and God, for coming to us today and helping us to understand how we could do things a little differently as a group in a united way. And maybe other people would join us and say, hey, I want to play that way. You know, I was in the same boat. I didn't know what options I had. So,
That's how they did it.
all right. And so I guess I'll post the link to that page that I couldn't figure it out when they came to me years ago and told me to do that, but you know me, I do it anyway. And so you can kind of read it and just see that it really is about just playing in a different way.
Yeah, I found it on Facebook.
Did you? Maybe you can post the link in the discussion then for people.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, all of you, and you all have a good day. And see
You
those of
too.
you who can make it tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I,
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. It's great.
Bye bye. And blessings to anybody listening to this. Thank you.